Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. So today is the week six immunology course. Um, Today we'll talk about the tools and techniques. The first question for this tutorial is precipitation reactions carried out in agar gels are referred to as option A is agglutination reaction, option B is immunodiffusion reaction, option C is flocculation reaction, and option D is neutralization reaction.
Ma'am, answer is immunodiffusion reaction.
Okay, so you are saying immunodiffusion reaction. Let's see. So you are saying immunodiffusion. So you are right, very good. Immunodiffusion reaction is the right answer. So let's see, start about that. What is this immunodiffusion? We know that this in the question they ask that precipitation reaction carried out in agar gel. So what is this precipitation reactions is it occurs when the soluble antigen, if there is an antigen and the soluble antibody, they both will interact and they'll form the insoluble complex because it's not so in not fully soluble, so that's why it will form precipitate. So this reaction when it carried it out, we called it as precipitation reaction like this. So this is the antigen and this is the antibody. When there is the zone of equivalence, when there is an antigen and an antibody both concentration are same, then it will form some precipitation. We called it as precipitation reaction, right? So when this reaction are carried out in semi-solid medium like agar gel, so what they do is this is the agar gel and here is an antigen and antibody. And this what in the experiment it was observed that these antigen diffuse toward each other, this antigen and this antibody, and there is a area in which this antigen and antibody amounts are equal, and they form a very visible precipitating line or band where they meet in the optimal proportion, and this is that line where they precipitate. So this is the agar matrix. They add this antibody to check the specificity and they add this antigen. Here the antigen amount is more. We call it as post zone. And here this is the pre zone where the antibody amount is more. So these antibody what they do is they start moving toward this antigen, and these antigen will start moving toward antibody, and there is a zone where the antigen and antibody amount are equal. We call it as zone of equivalence, where these will form the precipitate, and this process we call it as double, because this is the double immunodiffusion. So this method is called the immunodiffusion reaction, where both the antigen and antibody diffuse through the gel. We know that what is this diffusion and all, when the solute particles move from higher concentration to low concentration, right? And also, like whenever we spray some perfume also, it will diffuse and it will spread all towards all side, right? So that it will uniformly distribute. So we call it as diffusion. So here also this antigen and antibody, they start moving towards each others, and there is a zone where the equal, we call it as zone of precipitate or zone of equivalence. So this process we call the double immunodiffusion. So this is the protocol for immunoprecipitation protocols, that how people do. So you were right that the immunodiffusion reaction is the right answer. That is, precipitation reaction carried out in agar shell are referred to as immunodiffusion reaction. So moving to the next question. The result of ELISA test. ELISA is enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Is determined by measuring the intensity of the color, intensity of the radioactivity. Option C is change in chemiluminescence. Option D is diameter of precipitin ring.
Ma'am, it depends on the intensity of the color.
Okay, let's see whether you are right or not. You are right, very good. So, these ELISA, what is this ELISA is? First, let's see, that is enzyme. There is a presence of the enzyme, which is a link to the immuno that is antibody, sorbent assay. So, what is this technique is? It normally used to detect and quantify the antigen or antibody. In ELISA, this enzyme linked antibody is used. So there is a primary antibody and there will be secondary antibody, and which is linked with the any enzyme. How? Because they one substrate we have to add. So the enzyme linked which antibody, it will catalyze the reaction and produce a colored product. For that colored product is directly proportional to the how much antigen is present in the sample, right? As the name also suggests, enzyme linked sorbent assay. If it is enzyme linked, how it will produce this color and how this intensity of this color measure this, the presence of antigen, like how much amount is there because of the presence of secondary antibody. So primary antibody is specific to the antigen and secondary antibody is specific to this primary antibody, and these secondary antibody is attached with an enzyme. So when we add the substrate, this enzyme convert into a colored product and will quantify that colored product intensity. So that will determine how much antigen is present inside the body or inside the sample. Normally, this color is measured by a machine called spectrophotometer. We call it as ELISA reader also, which provide this quantitative results. So here, like some more things about this, that it is a very powerful measurement tool for the antigen antibody concentration. Very sensitive assay. This is very sensitive assay, and we use in like very much in laboratory research. Like people who work in immunology, they must do this ELISA to quantify, like for laboratory, and also in like ELISA test. We are aware about that in corona also. This antigen will detect by this ELISA because it is a very sensitive technique. Diagnostic of disease biomarkers, like in many diseases, this ELISA test have to be done, and it will let us know whether the this antigen is present or not, whether we have this particular disease or not. Even ELISA test in industries also people use for as a quality control. So in they we know that there are different type of ELISA according to the analyte detection method, like whether it is directly measuring the antigen. So direct ELISA will be there. We'll discuss about later. Indirect ELISA, sandwich ELISA. So there are different type of ELISA will be there. Each of them have its own protocol, but the basic principle will be similar. And these ELISA have this five-step procedure. First is antigen coating. So we'll do the antigen coating. After once the antigen coating will be done, then we have to block the other unbound sites. Blocking is very important. For that, we use one non-specific proteins so that it will block the non-specific absorption. Then we have to add the analyte and incubation. We have to do the incubation. After that, we'll use the labeled antibody. Labeled means which we want to see. Like if we want to see the expression of a particular protein, we have to add the antibody of that. If we want to go for the malaria test, like malaria antigen will be there, then we have to add the antibody for that specific to that particular protein. If we know that X protein will be high in the malaria, so that antigen will be there, that will be coating, and then we'll add the antibody against that particular protein. And after that, we'll add the reagent or substrate that will convert this enzyme into the colored product, and it will give a positive result if it's there, right? So this is the way this ELISA work, and this is the five how this work. This is the five-step procedure. Here we see that we know that according to the analyte, as we discussed that and how this analyte detection method, so there are different kind of ELISA will be there, right? So depending upon the how this analyte will be there, so different ELISA will be there. Like the first one is the direct ELISA, as the name suggests. What it will do is um, so there is a coating of this antigen. We can see that on the surface. So we'll bind the antibody directly to this antigen. So this enzyme, there will be no two separate antibodies. Only one antibody which is directly linked with the enzyme. So that's why we called it as direct ELISA. Direct enzyme linked. That means the antibody which we are adding already have this enzyme link. That's why we call it direct enzyme link. So this enzyme conjugated antibody to be measured. What happened now? We are adding this substrate that will convert this enzyme into a colored product, right? So this is the direct ELISA. As only one antibody we have to add, that antibody will give, when we add the substrate, convert the enzyme into the product, right? Next is indirect ELISA. What happened during the case of indirect? So there is a first coating of this antigen coated well. After that, that we add the antibody which we want to be measured. So this is a, like for more sensitive, if the concentration of any titer is very low, like yeah, that specific, in some disease what happen is, like, or maybe the just in, like, if the virus infection is there but it just started, so the titer is very low. For that we go for the indirect ELISA, because it is even more sensitive than this direct ELISA. Because here what happen is the already antibody we have to add, what this antibody which we want to be measured, after that we have to add the secondary antibody, then it will convert this enzyme into the substrate, into the product after adding the substrate. So that's why we call it as indirect ELISA, because it's not directly linked with the enzyme. First we have to add primary antibody, then this secondary types antibody. So there are two types of antibody, and the second antibody which convert into the colored product comes second, comes at the second position, right? So that's why we call it as this indirect ELISA. Next is sandwich ELISA. So sandwich, as the name suggests, here instead of this antigen coating, what we coat is antibody. After that, we add the antigen from the persons which we want to be measured, right? First, already plates are there in which this antibody is present, right? Which is specific to that antigen. So these antigen will come from the human serum or whatever. So these we have to add the samples, and then we'll add the specific antibody to this particular antigen again, which is linked with this enzyme link. So here we can see that it make a sandwich, like antibody, antigen, and then again antibody. So we called it as sandwich ELISA, right? And the fourth type is competitive ELISA. As the name suggests, here is a competition. First, these incubate antibody with the antigen to be measured. So we'll incubate the presence of antigen, also the antibody. They will bind. Once the antibody will already have this antigen, we add this to the coated one. So the coated one antigen, only that the antibody which don't bind with any antigen will bind with the coated one, right? These will not bind to the antigen because they already bind with the antigen. This is the like human sample, because we know that they have this antigen also, antibody also. So first, they what they do is they incubate with this, and they show the antibody which are not bind, they will bind with this antigen. After that, we'll add the enzyme link, and then we'll measure this antibody. So here is a competitive ELISA, as the name suggests, competitive. So competition is there because these already bind, they have a high affinity, they already bind with the antigen. Now which don't bind, they only that antibody will bind, or whichever the strong affinity they'll go. If this these antigen is have weaker affinity, then they'll remove this and they'll add with the second. If we know that like X disease have two types of proteins which have a very high upregulation, right? But that antigen will be more sensitive towards the one, so they are adding the second antigen also. If the concentration of that antigen is very high in that serum, they'll and they have a very high affinity, then these will remove and these antibody will bind to this particular antigen. So that's why, because there is a competition now, whoever this high affinity, they'll go and bind to that high affinity wala protein. So we called it as competitive ELISA. Now moving to the third question. Incubation of microtiter plate with a non-specific protein solution after coating with antigen or antibody is known as. Option A is coating, option B is blocking, option C is washing, option D is binding, and option E is detection.
Ma'am, binding.
Blocking.
Okay, so one of you are saying binding and one blocking. Okay, let's see. Um, so blocking is the right answer. It's okay. I'll explain you like why the blocking is the right answer. So as maybe like in the second question I mentioned when I was discussing about this ELISA, that there is a step also blocking, and why this blocking is important. So this we can see that this is the plate, right? Without blocking, what happen is there are different antibody which they bind here, here, like anywhere they'll bind. This is not the particular protein which we want to detect. So their binding is non-specific, they are binding to the site which don't even require, because antigen antibody are so specific. Even these particular protein have some peptides which may be the similar, so that's why these antibodies binding to this. So this is a kind of non-specific binding which will give the false signals. So what we do is we have to do this blocking step so that it will remove this non-specific binding, and only the specific antibody will bind to the particular type of antigen, right? So this is the main purpose of this blocking. But what is this blocking is? So this is like in ELISA, the wall are first coated with this antigen or antibody. After that, some sites are unoccupied. Here we can see that some sites which are empty, which are unoccupied, the surface of the well, they can cause this non-specific binding, right? To prevent this, we have to incubate this with a non-specific protein, so that the non-specific protein will come and they'll bind, because these sites are very prone to binding, right? If we are adding some another protein, then that protein will go and bind to that sites, right? So these will block the sites. Now the high affinity antibody, this antibody which we want to see the signals, they'll go and bind to the particular site only, right? And they'll not bind to this specific site, because these sites already occupied by the some non-specific proteins, right? So that's why normally what people do is this non-specific protein solution they used, like BSA, bovine serum albumin, skimmed milk, casein, and all. So this process we called it as blocking. As the name suggests, blocking is it block all the free binding site, and it reduce the background noise, ensuring that the specific antigen antibody interaction is measured. So more about this, so this is the figure. This is from one of the paper. I find some more information so that you will be able to understand nicely that this coating of wells with specific binding partners, either antigen or antibody, what they do is they leave some unoccupied hydrophobic sites on the plastic. Like this is the plate, we know that, and they'll in in ELISA also. So what happen is like they have some hydrophobic sites, and we know that what hydrophobic site will be do is, so these site must be blocked to prevent the non-specific binding. So to remove that and to remove the increase, because of that there will be more noise ratio, right? And we have to add some blockers that we already discussed. Is the blocking agent is BSA, skimmed milk, and all, so that it will reduce the non-specific binding and increase the signal to noise ratio, right? So to prevent that non-specific binding, we use the blocking buffers. And normally the blocking buffers, they come in three forms. These are for the washing and blocking we normally do for this only. That is skimmed milk, BSC, casein, and albumin. Now, wait a second. Sorry, wait. Yes, Jenny. Okay. Hello, I'm in the class, but I can. Who wants? Now only he wants. I mean, I'm in the class, and he can use your theirs now. I mean, today only I kept, after 24 hours only I can give now. Sorry, one call was there. Um, so moving to the next question, what is the purpose of adding the secondary antibody while performing the Western blotting or ELISA? Like why we are adding the secondary antibody? Like we have this one antibody, right? Why we are adding the secondary antibody? Option A is block any interfering noise coming from membrane or wall. Well, option B is for ensuring the proper binding of primary antibody to membrane or well. Option C is allowed detection of antigen sample by binding primary antibody. Option D is separate the sample from other proteins. So, what is the purpose? And
Ma'am, option C.
okay, allow detection of antigen sample by binding primary. Let's see. So you are right. Option C is the right answer for this question. So in Western blotting or in ELISA also, like in both, we know that after primary antibody we have to go for the secondary antibody, right? And these primary body, so there are two antibody. One is primary and another is secondary antibody in both Western blotting and ELISA techniques. So what is this? Why this primary antibody? These primary antibody, first we are adding particular to a particular protein which we want to see the bands, right? But to see that bands or to see that particular antigen antibody with whatever thing we want to see, we can't see without the color. But these primary antibody not linked to the any enzyme and all. So that's why we are adding the secondary antibody again, which will link to an enzyme. So that enzyme will convert into the product and we can able to detect. So mostly because this primary antibody is usually not detectable directly because they don't have any label. It will add the antibody which have a direct label, like in case of direct ELISA, we can see and we don't need any secondary body. But to visualize this antigen antibody complex, we have to one more antibody that is called the secondary antibody. And it is designed like that it is particular that this primary antibody. So this primary antibody for many primary antibody, like we can, if they have a same raised in the same host, we can we can like we can use the same secondary antibody for that all of that primary antibody, but this primary antibody will be specific to that protein. If we want to check the p53, then there is a specific p53. If we want to see the bands of CD21, then there is a specific antibody for CD21. If you want to see the bands for CD44, then there is a specific antibody for CD44, right? But if all these antibody are raised like in the mouse, then we can use the same secondary antibody for all of the three, that is anti-mouse, right? In case of this Western also. So, but that primary antibody must have specific to that particular protein p53. Just because they don't have any label, we have to design another antibody, secondary antibody, which is particular to that particular primary antibody. So, which have detect one part of the primary antibody. So that have a label that can convert into a product substance. So we called it as secondary antibody. It is usually conjugated with an enzyme. So what kind of enzyme mostly they have? This horse radish peroxidase or maybe the alkaline phosphatase. And in some secondary antibody they have attached this fluorophore. So these complex to be detected and quantified through a calorimetric or maybe the chemiluminescent in case of this horse peroxidase or fluorescent signal if the fluorophore is attached. So that's why. Uh, so um, so that's why the right answer is that it allow the detection of antigen sample by binding the primary antibody, because this primary antibody don't have any label. So that's why it detect the antigen how, by binding with this primary antibody. So it always bind with this primary antibody. So moving to the next question, the correct sequence for Western blotting is: first is performing the polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis, and then second step is transfer proteins to PVDF membrane, and then third step is proteins are denatured by the SDS and by boiling, and fourth is incubate the PVDF membrane to primary antibody and secondary antibody subsequently. So what will be the correct sequence? Like how we have to perform the Western blotting? Like the first step is which one and the second is which one? So option A have that in the sequence first, second, third, fourth. Option B is first and then third and then second and fourth. Option C is that first that protein are denatured, and then after that phase will be there, and then we transfer to the PVDF membrane and then incubate to the PVDF membrane to the primary and secondary antibody. Option D is first we transfer to the PVDF membrane and then we'll perform the page, and after that we incubate the PVDF membrane to primary and secondary, and the last is transfer the to the PVDF membrane. So what will be the right answer for this question?
Option C.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So both of you are saying option C.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's see. Wait. Okay, let's see the right answer for this question. You are right. Option C is the right answer. So what happen is, during the Western blotting, first we have to prepare the protein sample. How this protein sample prepares? So we know that we grow the cells in cell culture, right? So there will be cancer cells. If you want to normal cells, then we have to grow the cells. After that, we have to prepare the sample or cell lysate. For that, what we have to add? Some proteinase that will not cleave the protein. Proteinase inhibit the protein cleavage and we will get the pure proteins, right? So in during the protein sample also we have to go for the denaturation step, because if there will be a disulfide bond, it will give that we have to break it so that we can figure it out the proper peptide fragments, like where it comes in case of denaturing. But here the simple native phase, there will be no need and we'll get the same molecular weight proteins, right? So first is protein denaturation step, and that step first we have to denature using the SDS. There we also add in the repa this SDS. What is this SDS is? This is the sodium dodecyl sulfate that helps in the denaturation of proteins, and it will unfold the proteins. And boiling means that we have to do this denaturation step at 95 degrees Celsius, so that all the proteins will come into the unfolded state, because we know that proteins fold in a very optimum pH and optimum temperature. If we'll give the very high temperature, then all of the peptides will convert into the linear chains. They will don't have that quaternary or the tertiary structure. All the quaternary, tertiary and the secondary structures will convert into this linear chain. And why this linear chain is important? So that these will give this negative charge to all the protein, because we know that if there will be no negative charge will be there. So this is a very important step, as all the peptides have different peptides, but we have to stack in all the proteins, otherwise they will not move according to the molecular weight. For that we give first this SDS have the same charge. After that, in the second step, what we'll do is we load this sample into the well. So we have to make this gel in which there is a stacking gel which stacks all the protein, and there is a resolving gel which resolve very beautifully all the proteins according to their molecular weight, right? So second step is denatures the gels, and what happen in this, that the small protein migrate faster through the gels and the large protein will be the uppermost. So what happen, the small molecular weight will come here in the down, like this is the 10 kda, and then this is 15 kda, this is 30, this is 45, 70, 100 kda. So this small protein, because they are very small, they'll move very very fast and they'll come downwards, and the high molecular weight will be upwards, right? And the third step is that will transfer to the PVDF membrane, so that will allow the antibody binding. Now the sample we run on the gel, right? On the gel antibody we can't, this antibody will can't bind to this gel, right? For that what we have to do is, there is a membrane, that is nitrocellulose, or there is a PVDF membrane. So we have to transfer these proteins onto the membrane, transfer sandwich, right? So we have to transfer all the proteins on the PVDF membrane. Okay, now this is done to make that as accessible. And after that, we have to incubate with primary antibody because it can't binds to the gel. So now, if we'll incubate with the primary antibody and the secondary antibody, then this antibody will go and bind so that we can see the signal. So here also, and before that, one more step is there that I am describing, that blocking we have to do so that non-specific binding will not be there. And these blocking normally done by the BSA, that is bovine serum albumin, or by the milk casein 5% skim milk normally people do. After that, we incubate with the primary antibody that is specific to the desirable proteins which we want to see, the particular proteins that that antibody will be specific to that particular protein only. So these antibody will come and they will bind to that particular protein which we want to see, right? After that primary antibody, we have to add the secondary antibody because this primary antibody don't have any label. So the secondary antibody will come and they'll bind and they'll convert into the product. After the product, we'll see that particular kind of band. Here, the protein, like set, we want to see the P53 protein. So the band will come between the 40 and 60, and we'll see that beautiful bands here. So this is during maybe the autoradiography, or we can go for CamiDoc gel image analysis. One machine is there and we can see that beautiful bands. Any doubt on this? If you have any doubt, you can ask. So have you done this Western blot, you guys?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So you got it? Like what I'm trying to explain, how this protein works, how we can see the bands, how we can see this.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, moving to the next question. In the immunostaining technique, the proteins are stained with option A is antigen, option B is Comessi brilliant blue, option C is silver stain.
Option D, ma'am.
Okay, option D is antibody conjugated to fluorophore. So, anyone else?
Ma'am, it is option D.
Okay, okay, then very nice, very good. Both of you are right that option D is the right answer. That is antibody conjugated to the fluorophore. As we already discussed, that immunostaining, immuno means to detect the specific proteins. Oh, this is different. So immunostaining is immuno. Immuno, we also use the words for the antibodies. So here, if we want to see the specific proteins in a cell or in a tissue, we use the term immunostaining. This principle normally relies on the antibody, as we also antibody second name is um, immuno. So they what they do is they specifically recognize and bind to the target protein. To make this protein visible, that protein we have to attach with fluorophore or with any dye or sometime with the enzyme. And after this fluorophore attached, when we see under the fluorescence microscope, these fluorophore they emit a light so that we can see the precise location and protein inside the cell or tissue. See, this is the cell or tissue. This is the target antigen which we want to see. In this cell, we want to see a particular antigen. That is, let's say example CD44. So we have to add the primary antibody which is specific to the CD44. That antibody which is specific to the CD44 that will go and bind to this in on these cells where this CD44 relies. If this is in the cytoplasm, then it will bind some part of the cytoplasm where it's there. If it's in the nucleus, then it will binds to the nucleus inside the cells. After that, we have to add this secondary antibody and that is enzyme linked and that convert the substrate into the product. Here we are we like you can say that this is like kind of same as we see in the Western or ELISA. In the Western, we are checking only the protein, not we can't see the location, like where the location is desired location is. We can see the molecular weight or the particular protein is there or not, right? And there we extract the proteins. We can't go for the full cell, like fully cells. We have to lyse the cells. We can only see the amount of protein. But in this immunostaining, what we can see the full proteins because we don't need to lyse the cells. And we can see the location of the proteins, where this protein is, how the location is, how the like what kind of shape is there, right? So that's the difference. And there then, but this next step is the same, that the primary antibody we have to bind, then secondary antibody, and then this fluorescent dye or the fluorophore they attach and they convert into the signal, and that we can see into the fluorescence imaging micro image through the fluorescence imaging through the fluorescence microscope. Now, how this proteins will be visible? We can see that this. So this is like very beautiful proteins we can see. Here like two conditions are there. Like say A, B in this drug is there which is targeting the cytokeratin, and this is CD45. Let's see. So this is the figure from one of the paper to show that how the fluorescence imaging we can see. This is the DAPI. This is the dye which stain the nucleus. There is no need of primary and secondary antibody. Only we have to add the dye because we want to see this whether this protein is located inside the nucleus or outside the nucleus. That means in the cytoplasm. We want to know the location also, right? For that we have to know whether where is the nucleus. So to trace the nucleus, we add this dye DAPI, which stain and track the nucleus, and we can see the blue signal. Now we have to add this. This is the cytokeratin, which the primary antibody particular to the cytokeratin we are adding, and CD45 we are adding. So two primary antibody we are adding. Make sure when we are adding this two primary antibody, they are specific to another host. One may be raised in mouse and one is rabbit, so that they'll give the different color. If they are in the both same host, then both will give the only green signal, right? If we want to see like together, but here we don't need to go for. So because CD45 is not present, right? And we can see that this is the merge image. When we merge both of these images, we can see that this cytokeratin here, the space is not there, right? And this is the nucleus. Here also the amount is not present. Where is the nucleus? And here also the amount is very less because we can see the nucleus clearly, right? So that means mostly this cytokeratin where it is present in the cytoplasm, right? And how much abundance is there? We can see very good signal, right? So that means the protein is a very high in amount and they are present in the cytoplasm. Good signal of cytokeratin, that means high expression of cytokeratin is present in this situation, and mostly where they are present in the cytoplasm. Now, for CD45 in the second situation, we can see that this cytokeratin is not there. This is the nucleus, and CD45 is there. And we can see that this CD45 normally present in the cytoplasm, but here we can see that some is in the nucleus also. Some red signal is nuclear lamina also, right? And also like cytoplasm. So this CD45 is normally the cell surface, only the cell surface we can see, not in the cytoplasm. This is normally present inside the nucleus lamina, right? So that means the CD45 is normally a cell surface, or some we see in the, this is also the cell surface, but in this angle we, it looks like कि maybe it's inside the nucleus, but mostly we can see the signal is on the surface. So that means CD45 normally present on the cell surface. But through the Western blotting, we can't say this ki whether these are present in the cytoplasm, nucleus, or where. And we can't even see the like prominent or intact proteins, because there we have to lyse the proteins, so we can't see those intact proteins. So this is the immunostaining, right? Next question is to make the intracellular target, because here in these proteins are not present like outside, right? These are present inside the cells. To make this intracellular target, antibody have to reach inside the cells, right? They have to access inside. So there will be need the permeabilization step, right? Permeabilization means that will permeabilize, and the lipid interaction that will be loose. That means so that these antibody will go and they'll permeabilize and they'll go inside the cells, so that it can go and bind to that particular proteins. So all are permeabilization agents. So all these are the permeabilization agents except option A is Triton X100, option B is Twin 20, option C is saponin, and option D is paraformaldehyde.
Option D, ma'am.
Option D.
Okay, so you are right. This paraformaldehyde is the right answer, because all are permeabilization that help in the permeabilization step. These Triton X100, even Twin 20 people use, and saponin. One by one, we'll discuss what is this is. So, permeabilization, as I already mentioned, that is the process of making the cell membrane porous. So, there will be pore, right? So, that through the pores, this antibody will go inside the cells and will bind to that particular protein, right? So that this antibody can enter the cells and they'll bind to the this intracellular target. So this is usually achieved using this detergents, Twin 20, Tritonex 100. These all are the detergents, saponin or mild agents. So what they do is they disrupt this lipid bilayer. We know that plasma membrane is phospholipid bilayer, right? We read about this sandwich model and all, that there will be a phospholipid layer in which protein are embedded inside the phospholipid inside the lipids, and we have this layer of this lipids. So what these detergent do is they disrupt this lipid layer and they make this porous like structures, like somewhat, without destroying the cell structure. But they will not destroy the cell structure. We know that lipids are not a solid, they are fluid phase model also there, because they are like somewhat fluid. So they'll what they do is they we have two kinds of fatty acids, unsaturated and saturated, and normally this is more fluid like when there will be the saturated, so they convert this unsaturated into the saturated, and also this disrupt the lipid bilayer structures and all, so that it can make these pores, and these antibody will go inside. So in the options already three detergents are there. Paraformaldehyde, this is the different one, this is a fixative. What is this Triton X 100 is? It is a non ionic detergent. Normally, it is used for permeabilizing the cell membrane. Twin 20 is also a mild detergent. You can go for and check. Sometimes it's used for gentle permeabilization. Saponin, like this saponin is a detergent which interact with the cholesterol in the membrane. So cholesterol is also present inside the membrane other than this lipid. So normally saponin, how they make the spores by interacting with the this saponin, so that will allow this antibody entry. But this option D, you guys are right, were right, that paraformaldehyde, because this is a fixative, not a permeabilizing agent, it cross links the protein. Why this fixation is important? Because if we don't give for fixation, first we have to go for the fixation, that then only permeabilization. It fix all the protein and preserve the cell structures. It remove the waters and all, and so that it can preserve and we can see the proteins boundaries and all those things, and intact protein we can see. For that, first we have to fix the sample. For fixative, normally this paraformaldehyde is we guys used, so that it can fix, and after that we'll use the permeabilization, but it don't permeabilize the membrane, it just used for the fixation step. Moving to the next question, which of the following statement is true for flow cytometry? uh One is the forward light scatter is related to the size of cells. Second is forward light scatter is related to granularity of cells. Third is side light scatter is related to size of the cells. Fourth is side light scatter is related to granularity of cells. So there is another technique called flow cytometry. So these are the four statements. You have to tell which is one is the true. Option A is first and option B second and third. Option C is first and fourth, and option D is second and fourth.
Option C.
Okay, first and fourth. Anyone else?
Ma'am, option A.
Okay. Okay, then let's see. It's okay. Option C is the right answer. This is true. Both of you are correct that forward light scatter is related to size of cells. But the side light scatter is not size. It's with the granularity of the cells. Let's see like how this flow cytometry works. So this flow cytometry is like very nice discovery, like through the scientists. Now we can sort the cells, we can see the cells, we can see the cell cycle, like how if there is a rest, we can do the cell death, like we can do like varieties of assays through this machine, but it's very costly. So in this machine, what is there is a flow chamber, and there are different dichroic mirror is there, that, and also that dichroic mirror is detected is attached to this fluorescence detectors. These are three are for the forward scatter, and one is for the, oh, so these are for the different purpose, f1 f2 f3 different channels. Basically if you want to see different protein labels, so different colors we have to emit out, right? And one is for this forward scatter and another is for side scatter. Normally it works on the hydrodynamic focusing principle. and for that there will be a light sources laser. So these laser will go to that particular cells, only single cell, and this band pass filter will be there. Depending upon size and complexity, it will sort the cells. If you want to sort the cells on the size basis, how it works is, here we can see that we know that lymphocytes, they have a very small size, right, and they have a very less complexity. Then coming to the monocytes is come between the lymphocyte and neutrophil. Monocytes have a medium size and the complexity is medium, and neutrophil we know that a very big size and even the complexity is high. So in the after the sorting the cells in behind the machine, it will sort the cells based on the forward side scatters. That light will come and see whether how much complexity is there. They'll sort and they'll see, and after the this go to the detector, and this detector will process the image and it will come on the screen like that. Here, x-axis represent the forward scatter, and this forward scatter gives the size of the cells, like how much size, how big the size of the cell is. And this y-axis represent the side scatter, that how much complexity is there. So we know that bilob nucleus or something, or in lymphocyte, no, one nucleus is there. So if there is a less complexity, the cells will come here and even the size is less. If the complexity is high and the cell is small, then it will come here. If the complexity and size both are very high, then it will come here. If the complexity is very high and the size is also very high, very low, not high, size is very less, then it will come under here. So these are the four quadrant here. Four quadrant. When we go to the x-axis, these size will increase, and when we go to the y-axis, then complexity will increase, granularity. Basically we know that very much granularity is there in case of neutrophil, so that will give the complexity and this will go into the y. So in this four quadrant, what happen is, four quadrant, in this quadrant the size is very less and even the complexity is very less. And this is the second quadrant, size is very high but the complexity is very less. In this quadrant both size and complexity is very high, and here the complexity is very high but the size is very less. So these are the four quadrant which will give the how much the cell shape is and how much the complexity is. So basically this flow cytometry works on the two principle, to give the two characteristic information, and it work on these two features. One is this forward light scatter and another one is side light scatters. This forward related to the size of the cells, as we can see that this x-axis represent the size, and this side light scatter is related to the granularity of the cells. So first and fourth are the right answer. Here also, that forward, that light scattered in the forward direction, and it relate with the side cell. Side scatter, light scattered at the 90-degree to the lasers. So when light will come, it will give this a 90-degree because of the presence of the complexity in cells. But in case of forward, it will, this light will fall and this will goes into like forward. And here the cell population will sort here and here, this side. And if size will high, then it will go here, and if both have medium, then it will go like that. It will separate out the cells. So this is the right answer. Moving to the next question, the technique that uses the laser to analyze the characteristic of cell is: option A is ELISA, option B is Western blot, option C is flow cytometry, and option D is immunodiffusion.
Option C, ma'am.
Okay, anyone else?
Option C.
Okay. So you guys are right. Option C is the right answer. That is flow cytometry. As in the previous slide also we mentioned that laser is a source which will help in characterizing the cells. If there will be no laser comes, then how will we figure it out whether how much complexity is there, how much size is there? Because of the presence of the laser, it will go and it will then further divert the cells to the 90-degree or to the forwards depending upon their interaction and their focusing. Then it will helping in characterizing the cells. So the source is the laser only. So the other options are ELISA. No, it will not help in the characterizing of cells because they'll detect and quantify the proteins. And normally, what they do is in ELISA, we grow in the cells in the plates and then we'll collect the fluid. Not the cells, we'll collect the fluids. And normally in ELISA, we detect the cytokines, we detect the insoluble proteins, we detect other things which are present inside the fluid. So this is a fluid based technique. It quantify the proteins, antigen, antibodies. So it will not work on the so because we know that it work on the enzyme substrate color reaction and they don't use any kind of lasers. Next is Western blot. We know that Western blot detect the specific proteins after the gel electrophoresis. And here also we know that we use the antibody like ELISA and chemiluminescence or fluorescence. So this is also the no laser based cell analysis. And third one is flow cytometry. Yeah, we know that cell in suspension are passed through a single filter through a laser beam and they'll measure the side scatter and depending upon their complexity of the cells. So this is the technique where we use the lasers to analyze the multiple characteristics of cells. And the last one is immunodiffusion. Immunodiffusion also is just we in the previous slide we show that it's in the gel, right? We don't need any lasers. It's in the gels and then they just move towards each other and there'll be precipitin line or the band line which we decide that whether the interaction is there or not between the two antigen and antibody. So moving to the last question, the increase of cell surface MHC2 expression of activated macrophage can be visualized by option A is ELISA, option B is Western blot, option C is immunodiffusion, and option D is immunofluorescence.
Option D, immunofluorescence.
Okay,
From D, ma'am.
okay, very good, very nice. So option D is the right answer, immunofluorescence. As during that slide, I showed one picture. There we can see the cell surface localization. In ELISA, we know that it detects the cytokines, proteins in fluid samples only. We can't show the cell surface expression. Western blot, we have to lyse the cells. If we lyse the cells, we don't know any information. Where is the localization, right? We can only know about the protein concentration, protein expression, but there will be no information about the localization. Immunodiffusion, antigen antibody precipitation is there, so only that reaction will detect the specificity and all. No cell surface analysis, so there will be no visualization. The only thing there we can characterize and we can see the cell surface markers that MHC2 is the IF immunofluorescence because the dye will go and bind to the specific proteins and we can see through the fluorescence microscope and we can see clearly whether there is a cell surface expression is there and increase or not. Okay, so thank you. If you have any doubt you can ask. That's all for
No, ma'am.
Ma'am,
yes.
ma'am,
Chan-
I am having a doubt between the difference between the single immunodiffusion and the double immunodiffusion.
okay, that okay then in the next class I'll show you the with the slides with the diagram